When Hunter was just 1 year old, his life changed in an instant when we discovered that he'd swallowed a button battery.
This is the sort of battery that we mean by button battery. This is the culprit, and this is exactly the sort of battery that was removed in Hunter's case. As you can see, it's one of the slightly larger ones. It's about 2 centimetres in diameter. The little ones can pass through you, but these ones are just large enough for a child to swallow, but can get lodged somewhere in your system.
So it was a normal day, and I put Hunter down for a sleep. When he woke up, I pulled him out of the cot, put him on the floor, and went and got a bottle for him. And when I came back, he was coughing and spluttering. So I picked him up and patted him on the back, and he seemed all right.
I had a flu, pretty bad flu at the time, so we thought maybe it might be the flu. He just kept coughing, but then he'd stop and he'd play, so I thought, we'll take him up to the doctors.
Took him up to the doctors, and they couldn't get him in, so they said, just wait here and we'll see what he's like. And we had booked him in just in case the next day for a checkup. Overnight, he was pretty happy, but every time you'd lie him down for a sleep, he'd just start screaming. And by the morning, I said, look, there's something wrong to Jason. And I said, we've got to do something. So we took him back up to the doctors, and they said, seems all right, but take him to the hospital just to be sure.
Sent us up to the hospital, and we waited, and they did his obs and stuck on some sort of machine, and his blood pressure, everything was through the roof. So we were starting to get a bit worried then and didn't know what to do. And they admitted him, and they said, it looks like he might have swallowed something. The x-ray come back and they said, it's a 10-cent piece.
And they said, we'll send him down to the Children's Hospital and they'll get it out. Then when we were in the ambulance, the doctors rang up and said, you need to rush him. He's got a battery in his esophagus and you need to get him here now.
It's quite easy to mistake a round disc on an x-ray for a coin, and so it's important to note the actual features of a button battery with the extra dark circle on an x-ray. Coins will still need to be removed, but there's a great urgency in needing to refer a button battery on for removal as quickly as possible.
They realised there was a battery. They managed to get it out. This was late at night by that time. But they got it out.
This is Hunter's x-ray, and that's the battery, which matches perfectly well. The telltale sign is the little ring, which helps you differentiate it as a battery as opposed to a coin. And obviously, if a diagnosis is made of a battery, there is some urgency in getting this battery out.
He didn't get any better. You could hear this wheezing. It was just absolutely horrible. And this is from a little 1-year-old boy that all he ever does is run around. And he couldn't move. He just lied there and just looked at us with his eyes, and that's when we knew there's something else wrong.
I was asked to see Hunter a few days after he had already been in hospital. The button battery had been removed the first day when he was admitted, and at that time they had already noticed that he had burnt a large hole in his esophagus. It took a few days for everyone to realise that in fact more damage than that had been done, and in fact he'd burned a hole right through his esophagus into his trachea, which is his windpipe, which sits in front of the esophagus. So he had burnt a 2 centimetre hole in diameter between his esophagus and his windpipe. So everything that he was swallowing, food, drink and saliva, was going into his lungs, and that was a very dangerous situation. It meant that he was at great risk of getting infections in his lungs, and he wasn't able to eat and drink with any safety, or in fact even swallow his own saliva.
We were put in this little room with 5 other surgeons, just me and my husband. Every set of team's doctors got to tell us what they're going to do.
We just said, it's our kid, just whatever it takes, just fix him, make sure he survives.
And Jason and I were obviously at our lowest point by then, and we didn't handle it too well, but we stuck together and we just said, We don't care what's wrong with him, you fix him. And we just want him to be alive with us.
I met with his parents and spoke to a lot of other doctors, and we came to the decision that he had to undergo major surgery to correct this. He was quite unwell at the time. He had a bad lung infection already, and so it was felt that we had to try and sort this out in stages. And the first stage was to stop any food or drink or even saliva getting into his lungs, and to do that unfortunately meant an operation in his neck where we brought the esophagus out to the skin and spit just went into a bag. At the same time, we did an operation on his tummy and put a tube into his stomach so that he could be fed directly into his stomach. And unfortunately, he had to stay in this position for quite a few months while his lungs recovered.
I was worried the first 4 months I didn't leave his side. I left work, left my job. Virtually I was 24 hours a day I was in hospital with him until he progressively started getting better. Then my wife and I started taking turns.
We got a lazy boy recliner, so he basically lived in my arms and we lived on that chair.
Once he was recovered well enough, we had to go through the second stage of the operation, which was to actually repair the hole in his esophagus and his trachea. And in this operation, we had to go inside his chest and close the hole and repair the trachea. This all went very well, but unfortunately, after the damage from the button battery, as well as the operations that we'd done, he no longer had a useful esophagus.
So Hunter has had 2/3 of his esophagus removed. They used his stomach to rebuild his esophagus.
We made a tube out of a portion of his stomach, tunnelled it up to his chest and joined it back up in the neck.
He'd go home for a month and then come back in. He'd have another surgery and wait till he healed, and we'd go home for a while to heal and then come back again.
It had taken nearly 12 months to get him right again. And with the final procedure was to remove the tube in his stomach when he no longer needed it and he was able to eat and drink normally again. So it's been a very long haul for Hunter, which fortunately he's come through it very well. But at any time during the major operations, things could have gone wrong, and we've been actually very lucky.
Taken its toll on us. It's a lot to deal with, especially with a young family and that. We thought we were going to lose him.
I think he's got an expectation of a normal life. His esophagus isn't quite normal, and he may have discomfort, especially if he gets to chew food properly, because he might be able to swallow it quite as efficiently.
He's gone from being in hospital and being such a sick little boy for the last 2 years to see him now running around and playing like almost a normal kid. He gets in, he wrestles with his brother, he does what normal kids do now. We've got our little boy back. It's such a big thing to learn and a hard way to learn it.
Button batteries are very common in households these days. They're used in so many electronic gadgets such as children's games, children's toys and remote controls. And unfortunately, toddlers are the most vulnerable to these batteries. They're curious and they're most likely to put them in their mouth. It's estimated Australia-wide that we're probably seeing about 200 cases per year, usually small children needing emergency procedures to have these batteries removed. If you have any doubt or any concern that your child may have swallowed a button battery, please seek urgent and immediate medical help, because as we know, the battery can cause severe damage inside a child's body in less than 2 hours.
I would urge all parents to look around your home, know where the button batteries are, and keep them out of reach.